Phoenix Wright, Ace Attorney. Oh boy, where do I start with this one? I suppose I should begin with the fact that this game is not like most games. In fact, this game is a visual novel, which means you actually do very little in the game. It's mostly just reading and thinking, so if you enjoy a great story that contains hilarious humor and creative writing, then this is your kind of game. The game stars the titular rookie attorney, Phoenix Wright, on his way to become an ace attorney. This is his first game of many to come, and it clearly shows. Phoenix Wright is an amateur at the start of this game, being nervous in court and having his hand held throughout his first court case as an official lawyer, figuratively, of course. The first case does an excellent job of showing you what kind of game you're in for. It also does a great job of explaining the mechanics as well, which are relatively simple. The game is split up into two sections, the investigations and the courtroom sessions. During the investigation phase, the game essentially turns into a point-and-click adventure game, wonderfully tooled for Nintendo DS's touchpad. Of course, most of you will play this on an emulator, so touch controls aren't really as much of a topic of discussion here. Investigations can tend to drag on and often hit points where there is absolutely nothing interesting going on. During investigations, you go to the crime scene, areas related to said crime scene, and search for evidence that the police may have not noticed, and speak to witnesses that hold key information. Now, the witnesses in this game are all something else, let me tell you. All of them have distinct, wacky, colorful personalities, which are very hard to forget. Sure, some of these witnesses may seem one-dimensional, but at the end of the day, they do what's needed. They give you valuable information that you later take into the court. The courtroom phases are undoubtedly the highlight of not only this game, but rather the series as a whole. The courtroom can be a very tense place, and if you thought after playing Case 1 that the rest of the game would be just as much of a breeze, then you were sadly mistaken. Prosecutor Payne has nothing on whom you're about to clash with next. I suppose I should take the time to talk about the rest of the characters in this story-focused game. Let's start off by talking about the head honcho himself, Phoenix Wright. Phoenix Wright, as previously mentioned, is a rookie attorney. He has a very happy-go-lucky attitude, always trying to find something positive no matter what the situation. He is a very determined attorney, refusing to give up even when all odds are against him. Most of the time, he follows a line of questioning all the way to its conclusive end, not even knowing where it's going to take him. He never knows if his actions are going to make his case better or worse. However, he goes through with them either way. In his thoughts, he is a very cynical person, often criticizing the court, the witnesses, the judge, the prosecution, etc. Although he is a rookie and will learn much during the course of the game, he is already an excellent lawyer to boot. Now to talk about his boss, Mia Fey. Mia Fey has been friends with Phoenix Wright for a few years, having first met during a case in which Wright was a defendant. Mia Fey is quite the attorney herself, being capable of turning an entire trial around with a few mere objections. Everything Wright will come to know was first learned by Mia. Now there's going to be some spoilers right here, so I suggest skipping, like, I'd say, maybe 15 seconds later into the video. When a second case takes place, Mia Fey is the victim of murder. Obviously, this means she is deceased. Due to unfortunate events, her sister, Maya Fey, is a suspected killer. Maya Fey is the obvious sister of Mia Fey. She will act as your partner and or co-counsel in court. She and Wright typically exchange banter during investigations, sometimes over the most trivial things, such as the difference between a ladder and a stepladder. Maya is a spirit medium in training, and her trade often comes in handy for Wright during his trials. She's always good fun to have around, and helps brighten up the mood of the game, as well as keep its pace flowing smoothly. Now the judge, he is an old but wise man. Although easily swayed to one side or the other, he always delivers a fair verdict in the end. He can be quite the humorous old man himself, sometimes chiming in during witness testimony. He's a very patient man, but still has his limits. If you dare test him too many times, there will be consequences. Prosecutor Miles Edgeworth is a cold, calculating, collected man who will stop at nothing to find the truth and indict the defendant. Former classmate in front of Phoenix Wright, Miles Edgeworth moved away during the 4th grade. Wright and Edgeworth now stand as tense rivals in the court, their energy between the two unable to be replicated. Rumor has it that he forges evidence in order to win his trials. When you first go into court against him in the second case, you will instantly dislike him. He has a very condescending attitude, which makes it all the more satisfying when you win the case and get that sweet not guilty verdict. Earlier, I mentioned consequences, so I suppose it's a good time to go into some of the gameplay mechanics now, as there is consequences, quite obviously. The first part of gameplay I will cover is in fact the consequences you face for making a mistake in a court of law. In the game, there is a penalty system. You'll notice that during trials, there are 5 exclamation points next to your name. Think of them as your life points. 1 is taken away per penalty. Get 5 penalties, and your game is over. You get a guilty verdict and have to restart from either the last save point or the beginning of the trial. Penalties are given whenever the defense does something out of line, such as pressing a witness too much, presenting the wrong evidence, or just plain being stupid. To go back to basics, let's talk about what control you do have over the game during the court sessions. During court, you can, at any time, check the court record. It holds all the evidence and important info about the case at hand, including those involved. After a witness testifies, you are granted permission to cross-examine them. During cross-examinations, you can press a large button in the center of your touchscreen or right on the D-pad to get to the next line of testimony. You press left on the D-pad to go back. When looking at a line of testimony, you have 2 options. You can either press the witness for more info, in which Wright will yell, "Hold it!" Or you can present evidence that somehow contradicts the testimony, in which Wright yells, "Objection!" There will be times when you are specifically asked to present evidence to back your claims. At that point, you need to make sure you present the right evidence or else you will get a penalty, as previously mentioned. If you present the correct evidence, Wright will yell, "Take that!" Speaking of court sessions, one trial can only be tried for 3 days. A verdict must be given at the end of the 3rd day at the latest. This makes some of the cases very long, and it might drag on just a bit, but overall, the pace is still fast and fun. Admittedly, the gameplay is simple in execution, but so long as it works, which it does, there's nothing to complain about here. Now, onto the soundtrack. The soundtrack keeps the spirit of the game alive and it'll keep the pace going. Each and every track fits the mood of the moment, and most tracks are fast-paced and electrifying, helping make the court sections not only interesting, but exciting and fun. Without a superb soundtrack, the game will surely not be as enjoyable. Let's take a listen to some of the tracks. The graphics of the game are fairly simple. It's a game comprised of sprites. Considering these are all sprites that were transferred over from the Japanese Game Boy Advance versions, the quality in them are pretty low, but that doesn't distract from the gameplay or the story. The animations are smooth, crisp, and fast, akin to the soundtrack. The art style works perfectly for the game, and each and every locale and person have their own unique look. All in all, Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney is an amazing experience. It contains 5 great cases, the 4th and the 5th being the most exciting, in my opinion. You'll meet lots of great characters along the way that just bring the game to life. I give Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney an 8 out of 10.